So today's topic is strategy, right? And one of the things that textbooks do in Principles of Marketing is this chapter largely is written for large organizations. And it assumes that many of you will go to work for large organizations, and that may not be the case. In the post-industrial economy, many of you will go to work for small to mid-sized firms. The economy has changed in many respects in the contemporary era from even what it was 20 years ago. How many of you think that you'll stay at the same job your entire life? You won't. Not only will you not stay at the same job, most of you will actually change careers in your lifetime. And this is different than it was in the past. I can remember my step-grandmother talking about my stepfather. And I thought that my stepdad was an enormously stable individual. He was an FBI agent. He was not only an FBI agent, he was the special agent in charge of the FBI's field office for Santa Fe, New Mexico. Not a position that you get, easily. And I can remember my step-grandmother saying, when my mom married my stepdad, that she just thought that he needed to really hang on to this job. Because she said, he started out working for Anaconda Corporation, and my stepdad was a chemical engineer, and he had a PhD in chemical engineering, and she said, and that was a really good job. Jim was the first in our family to go to college, and not only did he go to college, he got the PhD, and then he quit that job to go to teaching, and that was a really good job. And then he quit that job to go into the FBI, and I just hope he can keep this job. And she thought he was shiftless because he had changed jobs 3 times in his life. You will change jobs multiple times in your lives. You probably already changed jobs several times, haven't you? From high school to college, and as you transition from college into the professional world, you will change jobs even more. And so I want to focus on strategy and goal setting that's not only applicable to large organizations, but also applicable to your lives as well. One of the things that we know about businesses are those that plan are better able to survive. Lots of small businesses and lots of entrepreneurs particularly have really good ideas, but maybe they don't engage in a lot of strategic planning, and as a result, they fail. Their businesses fail. Right? And in life, one of the things that we know is that if you will plan, you will do better. And it's amazing to me how many of my students last semester, as we were getting ready for graduation, the big graduation is always in May, about 15 of my students came to me and said, I'm graduating this semester and I have no idea what I'm going to do for a job. What should I do? That's probably not the position that you want to be in. And so one of the things that I will have is our career counselor come and talk to you at some point in the semester about how the College of Business Career Counseling Center can help you in planning for your future and your goals. So let's think about goals. Those of you who set goals are more likely to actually succeed if you set goals. So what is a goal? Somebody give me a goal that they have. Yes?
I want to make 6 figures.
You want to make 6 figures. Okay. So we have one goal of making $100K or more. Okay? Who else has a goal? Yes, sir.
I'd like to travel.
You'd like to travel. Okay. Who else has a goal? Graduate. That's a good one. You want to graduate. You want a job that you like.
Just getting picky now. Come on.
What?
You're getting picky
What, that you like?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's maybe a good goal. Who else has a goal?
Retire comfortably.
Retire comfortably. And soon. Maybe you should go into being a college professor. This is my 17th year here at UCO, and I can retire, I think, when I'm 55. So I've got 14 more years, and I can draw my teacher's retirement. Isn't that nice? And it's a defined annuity, something that most of you will not have. You'll have to put money away and save in order to retire. Okay, so these are all really good goals, but how can we make them better? One of the things that we have to think about when we plan is we want to think about what it is that we want. And as organizations plan, they need to think about what it is they do. And in a classical marketing piece that your text talks about, Professor Theodore Levitt wrote an article called Marketing Myopia, in which he argued that a lot of companies failed because they don't really understand what they do, or they think too narrowly about what it is that they do. If you went back to the beginning of the 20th century, a lot of large corporations were railroad companies. And a lot of those companies are no longer around because they didn't realize that they weren't just railroad companies. They were in a larger thing, which is what? What's the larger industry? Transportation, right? So think about these goals. Now, these are good goals. How can we make them better? More specific. Okay, so what makes a really good goal? Specific?
Measurable.
Measurable. Okay, so specific, measurable,
Attainable.
and attainable. So we should have specific. So you want to make 100,000 or more. Whose goal is that? Yours. You want to make 100,000 or more. What can we do to improve on this goal?
When I turn 25.
All right, very good. I want to be able to make $100,000 a year or more by the time I'm 25. Now we have a specific goal. We can measure it, right? How are we going to measure it?
By the time.
By the time you're 25, and is it attainable? Is it realistic?
Can be.
You don't think it's entirely realistic?
Well, it's possible, but the chance of it happening is not exactly high.
Wow, we've got a bunch of pessimists in here.
It depends on the field that you're in.
The Vista used to ask students, when I actually went to, I got one of my degrees here, my undergraduate degree, and the Vista used to ask students where they thought they would be by the time they were 30, and overwhelmingly, my generation, I'm a Gen Xer, said that we thought we would be millionaires. I was one of the ones who said that. We see how that's turned out for me, poorly, right? I'm not a millionaire. So, I don't know. I think it may be realistic. You're going to have to really work hard at it, though, right? And I can guarantee you, if you want to achieve this goal, there is one thing that you can do to get it, go into our professional selling program. Our sales students come out and they have job offers. We have 100% placement in our professional sales program. They're getting job offers of $50,000 base plus commission. And it's really, and most of our students make more money than I do now. And I make really good money. Marketing professors make really good money. That's the other thing you can do is go get a PhD in marketing. The average salary this year at AMA, the average offer was $160,000 for a marketing prof. So go get a PhD in marketing, and you can probably make $100,000 a year starting out. So it's not a bad lifestyle to consider. So it is. I think it's attainable, but you have to think about how you're going to go about this in a really logical way. What kind of jobs are going to pay that? Selling is one of them that does it. PhD in marketing is another. If you get a PhD in accounting, if you can stay awake long enough for that, the average offer this year was 175, I think. They make slightly more, which I don't understand because, again, marketing is the only fully integrated function of the firm, right? This should come dripping off your tongue by the end of the semester. So, make $100,000 or more. Travel. How can we, whose goal is that? Raise your
One of
hand.
my goals is his.
Okay. How are we going to make this more specific?
I'll say 30 countries in 10 years.
30 countries in 10 years. We could make it even better than that by saying what?
40
We could list the countries that you want to visit in the next 10 years, right? Is that realistic? Probably. You want to spend your money on travel, okay? Graduate. How are we going to improve on graduate? All of us want to graduate, right? That's the goal. What can we do to improve on that goal?
GPA,
Okay, I want to graduate with a 3.75 by May 2015 with a degree in marketing, right? That's what you want a degree in marketing by 2015 with a GPA of 3.75. Very good. That's a specific goal. By the way, I used to tell students that GPAs didn't matter. What mattered was you got a degree or not. One of the companies that we now work with in recruiting our students for the sales team or for the sales competitions and sponsors part of our competitions is Paycom. And I used to say grade point averages don't matter. Nobody's ever going to look at that unless you go to graduate school. And if you don't want to go to graduate school, don't worry about it. Paycom actually did a regression analysis, and they found out that they want people who have a 3.75 or higher because they said they do better in their product line. So companies are actually now looking at GPA, so that's something to think about as you plan for graduation. You don't want to just graduate with the bare minimum, which is, what is the minimum now to graduate?
2.25.
2.25, right? Get a job that you like. That was yours. What are we going to do to improve on get a job that you like? What job do you want?
Eventually, I'd like to have my own photography business.
Okay, so you want to establish your own photography business by when? A year or so after you graduate, when do you plan on graduating? Next fall. So by 2016, right? All right, very good. Retire comfortably and soon. Who said that? What are we going to do that?
To retire comfortably and save.
You're going to say,
I've got
okay.
retirement figured out. I just don't know how I'm going to get there.
Okay.
The soon part is
The soon part may be problematic.
that is the issue.
Yeah, okay. PhD, marketing, 20 years, defined annuity. Good job. All right, very good. So we want to set goals, and we want to think about what it is that we are doing. What kind of organization are we? The text talks about for-profits. Most of you will go to work for a for-profit institution, right? A company, a business, an entrepreneur, something like that. We also have non-for-profits, and marketing is important in those fields as well, and it's important that they engage in planning and strategy planning. When we look at larger organizations, there are different types of planning that occur at different levels. So if you're looking at a big corporation like 3M, for example, what is 3M maybe most famous for? Sticky notes. And how did they come up with sticky notes? By accident. They allow their scientists to work on a certain percentage of projects that are not, necessarily corporately sponsored. They can just use it, and if they come up with something that's useful, they'll pay them. They own the patent or whatever it is, intellectual property on it. But sticky notes, 3M is known for adhesives, right? How many of you had braces when you were in high school? I kept popping mine off the entire time because they hurt. I'd pop the wire, and I was supposed to be in braces for like 18 months, and I ended up being in braces through most of my high school career because I kept, being self-destructive. 3M actually came up with how many of you had a light cure brace? Where they put the adhesive on your tooth and then they put the bracket on and they shine the light on. Anybody get those? That was invented by 3M, I believe. It's the light cure. So they're known for adhesives. They had a scientist working on it, noticed that it wasn't a particularly good at sticky adhesive, but you could actually put it on something else, a piece of paper, and pull it off and not have the paper rip. And they came up with this idea for the Post-it notepads, and so they were pretty successful in that. So 3M has a lot of different divisions. Their Light Cure is under their dental products strategic business unit. So at the top levels, where we have the corporate, structure at the top, they're going to be looking at broad range goals, right? And big vision stuff. As you get to the strategic business units, it becomes more specific. And then as you get to lower levels within those, you become even more specific. So people that are working particularly within, let's say, a product line, they're going to be focused on, in terms of planning, what kinds of activities. If you're at the top corporate level, you're probably planning for what? The future, long term, 5 years, 10 years out, things like that. At the strategic business unit level, more specific, and when you get to a product line, what do you think they're planning for? Day-to-day stuff, production, goals, things like that, right? So, in thinking about this, one of the things that we know about successful companies is that they have a core set of values. In a book called Built to Last, the authors surveyed all kinds of companies, and they found that the most successful were companies that were actually fairly old, and they had core sets of values. Now, what was interesting about that they found was that you didn't necessarily have to have any specific, or what we even might think of as being good values. One of the companies that was highly successful was Philip Morris. And Philip Morris manufactures what? Cigarettes. And the core culture and core values that Philip Morris had were described as being absolutely ruthless. The CEO of Philip Morris said, "I see nothing morally wrong with selling a good that people don't need." And it's not just that they don't need it. Cigarettes are actually what? Harmful for you, right? So it's not just that they are not necessary, they're actually harmful. There's lots of products that we have that are maybe not necessary but are not harmful, right? Allen Edmonds shoes. It's my favorite brand of shoes. See if you need Allen Edmonds shoes. Probably not. But I like them. And I think they're a good product. It's not necessary. Philip Morris goes beyond that in that they actually are manufacturing harmful products. Contrast that with Johnson & Johnson. Now, Johnson & Johnson has actually been in the news lately for having some issues in terms of ethics. And one of the things that you should start to think about, because we're going to talk a lot about this, is the ethics part of marketing. And this is Johnson & Johnson's credo. And they've been around for a long time. And they've been fairly successful. We believe our first responsibility is to the doctors, nurses, and patients, to mothers and fathers, and all others who use our products and services. In meeting their needs, everything we do must be of high quality. We must consistently strive to reduce our costs in order to maintain reasonable prices. Customers' orders must be serviced promptly and accurately. Our suppliers and distributors must have an opportunity to make a fair profit. We're responsible to our employees, the men and women who work with us throughout the world. Everyone must be considered an individual. We must respect their dignity and recognize their merit. They must have a sense of security in their job. Compensation must be fair and adequate, and working conditions clean, orderly, and safe. We must be mindful of the ways to help our employees fulfill their family responsibilities. Employees must feel free to make suggestions and complaints. There must be equal opportunity for employment, development, and advancement for those who qualify. We must provide competent management, and their actions must be moral, just, and ethical. We're responsible for the communities in which we live and work, and the world community. We must be good citizens, support good works and charities, and bear our fair share of taxes. We must encourage civic improvement, better health and education, maintain in good order the property we are privileged to use, protecting the environment and natural resources. Our final responsibility is to stockholders. Businesses must make a sound profit. We must experiment with new ideas. Research must be carried on, innovative programs developed, and mistakes paid for. New equipment must be purchased, facilities provided, and new products launched. Reserves must be created to provide for adverse times. When we operate according to these principles, the stockholders should realize a fair return. This is a core set of values, and Johnson & Johnson has really, I think, in many respects tried to live by that, although there has been some recent controversy with Johnson & Johnson. But you don't necessarily have to have these kinds of good values. And in fact, there are some economists that would argue that this is morally wrong. That business exists, particularly for-profit businesses exist, to make money for their shareholders. And so as you think about this, as we move into the chapter on ethics, I want you to think about this kind of credo, because we'll talk a lot about what it is that businesses should do and how those core values should be organized. Your text talks about using marketing dashboards. The idea is that we can visualize and put together our marketing plan and our goals and strategies, and then we can use these things as a visual display to see if we are going to meet our goals. So one of the things that we talked about was making our goals specific, measurable, and attainable. Once we do that, do we just put the goals, should you just write them down in your daily planner and stick it on the shelf and forget about it? No, what should you do?
Revisit it, revise.
You should revisit it, see where you're on, where you're at in attaining those goals, and be flexible if you have to in terms of changing it. For example, one of the things that happens is a lot of times students think they're on schedule to graduate. This happened to my niece at OSU this year. She was supposed to graduate in May, and it turns out that her advisor had forgot to tell her about a course that she needed under the program, because they'd been looking at the new catalog and she was under an old catalog, and she had to stay in school one more semester and not graduate. So her goal was to graduate in May. We had to revise that goal. I was personally a little upset. The advisor and I had a very heated conversation about their responsibility to students and making sure that they graduate on time. But you revisit the goal and see if you're doing that. Companies can use these marketing dashboards to monitor those things, right? And there's software to do that that makes it really, really easy to do. The Boston Consulting Group came up with a business portfolio analysis that we can use to look at our products and things like that. And it forms a 2x2 matrix with low and high. So you have high and low and high and low. So you have this 2x2 matrix, and you can determine where your product falls on this analysis. So if you have high market share and low growth, that's what they call a cash cow. Let's think about technology today. Do you think cell phones now still have a high market growth? So let's think about this in the United States. Do you think that this device still has potential for high growth? Yes or no, in the United States? No? You do? You still think there's a lot of people out there that don't have a cell phone? Okay. What percentage of people do you think don't have a cell phone? Huh?
25?
I don't know. I have no idea what the percentage. This is kind of an interesting question. Does the cell phone in the United States have high growth potential?
Yes.
Clearly, 15 years ago it did,
Mhm.
right? But today,
The 8-year-old.
They don't market to children.
they don't market to children?
Yeah, if they market to children, I mean, I'm not saying they should.
Okay, maybe there is still high growth potential in the United States in terms of marketing to ever younger generations. And now kids are getting cell phones. Their parents are buying them cell phones. Why are their parents buying them cell phones?
To get hold of them.
It's a leash. It's your electronic leash for your kid, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's a great electronic leash, yeah.
They have iPads.
They don't need cell phones because they have iPads. Okay,
Like my kids for phones anymore.
okay. I think that maybe the cell phone, I think maybe Apple's cell phone is a cash cow for it. They have a high market share, although they're losing it, right? And I'm not sure that there's a huge growth potential anymore. Most of the people that don't have cell phones, you may never get to have a cell phone, right? There are people who just absolutely don't want them.
But what about the people that do that continually update every time something new comes out?
Okay, that's planned obsolescence. And I think Apple does that too, don't they?
Yeah.
My cell phone, this one keeps going dead really, really quickly. And what am I waiting for? Why haven't I got a new cell
The
phone?
new one comes out.
I'm waiting for the new, I'm waiting for the 6 to come out before I go, get a new cell
I'd rather
phone.
get a new battery for my phone, because I have the iPhone 4S. I don't want to upgrade, I don't want one of the new ones, but eventually I'm gonna have to because they're not gonna make the 4S like adapters or anything like that for a new one.
Yeah, I don't, the 5, which is the one that I have, has a lot of problems with the battery. And apparently they actually have a program to replace the battery that they just released. I just saw that in the news that they were releasing, and I'm like, I don't want a new battery, I want a new phone. But I'm shallow and pretentious that way. I want a new toy. So I think that maybe the cell phone is a cash cow, although maybe, I don't know, maybe for Apple, it's a star, right?
I think it is for Samsung because the fact that they've taken over the Apple market, because now there are people who have iPhones are now switching to Galaxy S, like 5 or 6, because like the iPhone's becoming obsolete to some people because it's not as good as the Galaxy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you went back maybe 5 years ago, I think Samsung was a question mark with their Galaxy because Apple really had convinced us that Apple was cool, right? And that's what people wanted. Why do you think Apple is maybe not as cool as it was? And that maybe Samsung has moved from a question mark into the star category with their phone.
Had to do with technology. Samsung had patents that were working on that back in the day, and Apple was trying to build products.
I think that's true, although they've engaged in a patent war with each other, right? And I'm not sure that either of them have come up with, in my opinion, having been an intellectual property attorney, I'm not sure that any of the patents that they had really should have ever been granted. Because I'm not sure that it's all that novel. Now, I don't know, maybe the ability to touch phones and share playlists and pictures, that was really novel. I'll tell you why I didn't get a Samsung. When I went in to look at them, when I traded in my 4 for the 5, I thought, I really want that thing that you can touch. And they were trying to show me how it worked in the store, and they could never get it to work. And I thought, not nearly as cool as you think it is. But Samsung did convince people that maybe they were more cool than Apple. And how did they do it? The advertisement. And the epitome of the advertisement and what made maybe Apple not as cool as the Samsung Galaxy, whatever it was, X3 or whatever the model was when you saw the guy who said, oh no, I love my Galaxy. I'm just standing in line. I'm holding my spot for somebody else. And his parents come up, right? You all saw that ad? That's the epitome of not cool. When your parents start something, right? It's why your generation is fleeing Facebook all of a sudden. Because your parents are creeping around on it. Right? So question marks, you have high growth, but you don't have the market share. I think that was Samsung maybe 5 years ago. They may have moved into the star. Where you absolutely don't want to be is a dog. Low growth, low potential. And what are you going to do with those products?
They're gonna become obsolete.
Yeah.
It's like BlackBerry.
Yeah, what you need to do with those is you need to get rid of it, just get rid of the product and make as much money as you can, as quickly as you can. Things like, what would be an example of that in modern technology? Fax machine. People still list their fax number, but does anybody actually fax anything?
No.
No. It's becoming an obsolete technology, right? One of the things that you can do with this is that you can consider diversification analysis. Now, with regard to businesses, diversification is a more risky strategy. One of the things that we tell students with regard to their own financial portfolio is that diversification of your portfolio is a good thing. Why is that?
You don't get hurt.
It minimizes microeconomic risk, right? If you have all of your money, for example, in Enron stock 10 years ago, what happened? It went broke, right? And you lost all of your money. If that was your entire 401k, which a lot of the Enron employees, they had their entire 401ks in Enron stock, and they went from being millionaires to being bankrupt overnight and having to look at other ways of retiring. But if they had diversified, they would have been better off. Because when Enron went broke, if you have other stuff in your portfolio and in other industries, you've minimized your microeconomic risk. Right? Now, for businesses, diversification is more risky. Why is that? Why is it more risky for businesses? Because if you start diversifying and you get into products and services that you don't understand, you may have a difficult time in managing those strategic business units. And the example the text gives you is Ben & Jerry's, right? Ben & Jerry's, how many of you like Ben & Jerry's ice cream? It's pretty good. What if they decided to get into a clothing line? What would be problematic for them in selling Ben & Jerry's clothing?
Their name.
Their name?
Their
Another
name
good.
has ice cream.
Yeah, the impression in the mind of the consumer is that it's ice cream and you don't know anything about clothing, right? You don't know anything about the production process, where to source stuff, what you should price it at, and so it becomes a much riskier strategy for them in terms of doing that, in terms of diversifying. All right, I want to ask you at this point, does anybody have any questions about chapters 1 and 2? It's clear as day to everybody. Everything in chapters 1 and 2, and the marketing philosophy, history, and strategy chapters are absolutely crystal clear in your mind. Don't be like George W. Bush, who once said, "There's a lot of uncertainty that's not clear in my mind." Okay? Got a question? Ask. Because what we're going to do now is I'm going to give you the remainder of